Hello, Greens. I'm Michael O'Neill. Welcome to How Greens Get Things Done. Every week at Sunday, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, I talk to you about tips, tricks, and techniques for how Greens can build their party, build their campaigns, and build their communities. And this week we're going to be talking about some tools you can use to raise your email game, how you can more effectively and efficiently email groups of journalists or groups of contacts, also managing larger lists for reaching out to your community, and also managing discussion groups within, say, your county group or your local group of Greens. So I think it's going to be pretty straightforward for you today. Happy Labor Day weekend. Thank you for joining me here on a Sunday afternoon, or if you're watching later, thank you so much. If you find this broadcast helpful, please do give me your feedback on this page. Give a like, give a comment, send your questions. You can post right here on this page, or you can post to michael@gpny.org over email. Speaking of email, let's get to the topics for today's episode. We're going to be talking about how to use the tool Mail Merge with an email app called Thunderbird. And Thunderbird is an open source free email application. If you use Firefox or however you have ever used Firefox, Thunderbird is made or is at least overseen by the same organization, the Mozilla Foundation. We're going to be talking about a service called MailChimp, which is free for use to up to like 2,000 or 3,000 subscribers, sending, up to maybe 10,000 like emails a month. And then it has pretty reasonable pricing options after that. We'll also be talking about a service called Action Network, which is more geared towards activists and is also free to use at a certain level. And then we're going to be talking about how to use Google Groups for managing your discussion lists. And we're going to be talking about why those tools are appropriate for different kinds of tasks. So let's talk about Thunderbird and Mail Merge first. So a lot of people, for maybe the last, 10 years, maybe a little bit more, are used to just checking their email through their web browser. Especially if you're a Gmail user, as many people are. You just go into your web browser and you're just kind of working with your email strictly online. But there was a time in the history of the internets in which people actually had a desktop client on their computer, and they would actually download all of their email messages to their computer and then go offline and then read and reply to their messages. And then the next time their computer went online, their email application would upload all of those messages to where they needed to go. This was at a time when you could not rely upon having a constant broadband internet connection, even if you were in a relatively connected environment like a university campus or an office, or even if you had any kind of internet connection at home. So it's a little bit of a throwback for some users. If you're using Microsoft Outlook at your job, or maybe at a place that you volunteer at, then that's an email application, right? It's a piece of software that's not just a web browser that lives in your computer. And there are some features within a desktop email client like Thunderbird or Outlook, except you don't have to pay for Thunderbird. There are features that you can use like email merge. And email merge is like running a mail merge in an Office suite. So if you've ever had to print a bunch of address labels or print directly onto a bunch of envelopes, and you had different addresses for different places that you wanted to send to, then you've probably used Mail Merge, or someone that you know has used Mail Merge. And if you wanted to print a bunch of form letters that were going to different people, and basically the premise is that you have maybe a spreadsheet full of contact information, like people's names and address or phone numbers, whatever. And then your document software, say Microsoft Word or whatever you're using, grabs a record from that list of contacts, plugs it into the appropriate places in the recipient box of the form letter, generates a copy of the form letter for that recipient, and then generates a new copy of the form letter using all of the information for the next contact in your spreadsheet. And it goes all the way down and can create, a dozen or 50 or 100 or 1,000 copies of this form letter without you, the user, having to manually input all of that information into the form letter yourself. An email merge works similarly to a mail merge, except instead of generating copies of a letter or a form that you're going to print out, it's generating copies of an email. And each recipient will get one email sent specifically to him or her. Now, you might be thinking, well, why don't I just use a carbon copy, right? I've got the CC field on my email client or my email web service. Why don't I just paste 250 names into that and send to all of those people at once? Well, the reason is because it's kind of rude and it makes you look like a little bit of a tool. So if you've ever done that in the past, you're not a bad person, okay? But if you can learn a better way of sending out messages to relatively large or medium-sized groups of people, please do that, because it's going to make you seem a lot more reputable as an organizer, especially if you're dealing with people like journalists, and it's going to make your group seem more reputable. So rather than just pasting 250 names into the carbon copy address where all of the recipients are going to see who all of the other recipients are, and exposing you to, ending up on a spammer list possibly, you are sending discrete emails, one to each recipient. Also, there's the option of using the blind carbon copy field on your email client or your Gmail account or Yahoo account or whatever. But when people get that email, they're going to see that they were blind carbon copied on it. They're going to see that they are one of many recipients on that single email. And at least you're not exposing their information to a bunch of other people, but it still doesn't look as professional or as reputable, let's say, as if they were just getting an email going straight to them. And so that's where an email merge, if you're sending to a group of, say, 20 people, 50 people, maybe up to 100 people, email merge can be a really helpful tool so that you're not just sending individual emails yourself, but you're sending, manually, right? Because that would take a long time. You're using this tool to automate part of that process, but the recipient of your email is still getting a customized experience of the message that you are sending. And you can even include things like their first name, right? Or other information that is specific to them so that they can get that sense of that this was an email that was thoughtfully intended for them, which it is, right? If you've taken the time to put that customized information into your spreadsheet, you have consciously put them in your contact list, you're getting a little bit of automated help to send to them, but the whole thing is done in a computer anyway, right? The whole thing is automated. So if you can get a little bit of extra help, that's not a bad thing. Now, I do want to give the caveat for all of the tools I'm going to talk about today is don't be a spammer. If there are people who don't want to receive your email address or your email messages, whether they're journalists or whoever, then take them off of your list and send them a reply saying, okay, thank you, message received. I won't send you any more of these, whether it's your email newsletter or press releases or whatever. Respect their wishes. And even if you think that what you have to say is super important and you can't imagine why they would not want to receive those messages, it's just not up to you. So If they request that you not email them, bulk mailings anymore, respect that request. All right, getting those caveats out of the way, let's talk about our first tool here. So let's transition to the magic window. And this is a tutorial I found on using mail merge with Thunderbird. So Thunderbird, you can go to mozilla.org and you can find under their projects, well, let's see, there's Firefox. What else they got here? Maybe just under Get Thunderbird, possibly. Let me take a look up here. Right. So I'm trying to find an easy to type URL here for you. All right, I think what you're really best off doing is just going into your favorite search engine and just typing Mozilla Thunderbird, and it's going to take you to the mozilla.org domain, and you can download Thunderbird, and you're going to set up your email account within Thunderbird. So Thunderbird is going to act as a kind of intermediary that will check your email, download it, and then you can send email through Thunderbird through your account. And so you're going to provide Thunderbird with your email credentials, your logins, basically just your email address, and then your name, and then the password for your email account. And if you're using a big provider like Yahoo or like Gmail or Hotmail, Thunderbird should be able to just automatically detect what the settings are for that account. You just need to know your email address and your password. And so you don't need to use Thunderbird as your day-to-day email client. If you prefer what you're already using, that's fine. But for these special occasions where maybe you're sending out a press release to a couple dozen journalists or whatever, this is a tool that you have at your disposal, and it can make things, just a lot more efficient. All right, so on this university website, gustavus.edu/GTS/Thunderbird mail merge, they have a tutorial about how to set up mail merge within Thunderbird, and I'm actually going to post that to the comments of this live stream right now. And so you can use that to get a sense of the tutorial. And for sending a mail merged email, there is basically two components. One is the email message itself. So you're going to open up Thunderbird, you're going to compose a new message, and let me give you a sense of what that might look like. So here's a screenshot of what a message might look like in Thunderbird. It's slightly cropped, but it gives you a sense. And it's going to be familiar to what you've used in the past, right? There is a to section. The from section is going to be your information. There's a subject line, and then there's a body. And within that body, you're going to type whatever it is that you want the content of your email to be. You can put the content of your press release in there. And maybe in a future episode of How Greens Get Things Done, we can go over best practices for press release format. It's best not to attach your press release if you're sending one. Journalists can be pretty wary of attachments. They, as you can imagine, get a lot of spam. And so, just opening up an email where the text is in the email itself is a lot less risky for them than opening up an attached Word document or even a PDF that might be housing some kind of virus, right? So you're gonna, within mail merge, you actually have two different options for loading in the recipients of the email. And that's actually the second chunk of this project, is your recipient list. So you've got your actual content of your email, and then you've got your recipient list. And so let's talk about the options you have for that. First option within Mail Merge is you can put the recipients in the actual to box, and you can put them on one line at a time, or you can have them separated by commas. And if you were to just click the regular send button, then it would just send it as like a CC'd email, right? Where just everyone's getting one copy of the email and everyone can see who the email is going to, which isn't great. So instead of clicking send, you're going to click file and then mail merge, and then that will bring up a little pop-up window to give you options for how you want to send your mail merged email. And let me see if I can bring up a few more screenshots here. So here's what that pop-up window looks like. And it's going to ask you for the source of your recipient list. And then it's going to ask if you want to send now or send later, if you have any attachments. And then there's some batch options that I never really use. And so if you select source, or if you select address book for your source, then it's just going to take the email addresses that you've put in your to field, and it will then, when you click send within the mail merge window, it will generate one copy of the email for each recipient and then send that copy to just that recipient. So if you have 50 recipients, it will generate automatically 50 copies of your email, each one of those copies of the email going to one recipient on your list. And that's pretty much it. Like that will get you going. Now you do have the option of setting the source to a spreadsheet, and it would be a CSV style spreadsheet. And this gets you into some customized options, right? So when you're running your email source just from your address book, you're going to have the exact same email going to each recipient. But if you wanted to change, for instance, the salutation on your message to Dear Bob for when it goes to Bob Jones, or to Dear Bill for when it goes to Bill Smith, or Dear Mary when it goes to Mary Swanson, then you need to provide variables within your email, and then the appropriate source data to plug into those variables. When we say variable, that's kind of a code term for coding. That refers to a placeholder, basically. And it tells the program, hey, wherever you see this placeholder, there is different data that can go into that placeholder, and we're going to tell you what that data is for whatever copy of the email or iteration of the document, etc. So within Email Merge, you can set up those different customizable variables in your spreadsheet. Within your spreadsheet, you have a column for first name, you have a column for last name, you have a column for email, you have a column for date in this example, right? You could make a column for favorite ice cream flavor, or for the date of their birthday, or their favorite color, right? And then you could plug those variables into your email so that when the copy of the email goes to Bob, the email will say, Dear Bob, thank you so much for coming to my ice cream party and bringing a tub of chocolate ice cream, because you have chocolate in the column, right? Here, let me use an example using the actual data that we have. You could say, Dear Bob, Thank you for stopping by my office on Friday. It was great to talk to you, yada, yada, yada. And then the copy that goes to Bill Smith will say, Dear Bill, thank you for stopping by my office on Saturday. It was great to talk to you, yada, yada, yada. And on down the line. And so each recipient is getting an email copy that is contextualized to them. Now, to be honest with you, I rarely use these features of mail merge. I have on occasion, but I don't usually, because what I use this for the most is sending out press releases. And so, for the most part, I mean, if you're going to send a customized email to a journalist, just send it manually, right? But when you're sending out a press release or a media advisory, at least for like the first pass, it's not the worst thing in the world for everyone to get the same copy of the same thing. They are going to spend maybe 30 seconds. Like, you'll be lucky if they spend 30 seconds looking at your message, because they get a lot of press releases sent their way. So you just want to cut to the chase. If you're, if there's a journalist or a few journalists that you have a personal connection to, that you've actually spoken to them as human beings, go ahead and just send them their own email with its own customized introduction, and send that outside of mail merge. But for everybody else, just send them what you're sending everybody else. All right. Let's take a look here. What else do you need to know? Right. So the variables, just to wrap up that, right? The way that Thunderbird knows where to put the different variables is through these little magic words that you put in your email as you've composed it. So in the to address, you're going to put the word email within double brackets, because within your spreadsheet, you have labeled the column where the emails are email, right? All lowercase, one word. And if you wanted to actually use first name and last name, then you would put these little magic words within the double brackets, first name and last name. And then Thunderbird knows to use the first name and last name values to plug into those for each copy of the email. Now, this is only if you're using a spreadsheet as your source. If you're using address book as your source, then you don't need to worry about this at all. It's just going to take it from the to line of your address field. Now, there are actually two add-ons that you want to use within Thunderbird to accomplish this. So the first is Mail Merge. That's the name of the app, or the plugin, the add-on, I should say. And that is within, you can find that within the Mozilla website for add-ons for Thunderbird. You can just search for Mail Merge. The second is Send Later, and that's actually what's up on my screen right now. And the nice thing about Send Later when combined with Mail Merge is that it allows you to generate all the copies of the email that you're going to send out, and it'll actually save them in a outbox folder, or it's basically a list of messages that you are about to send, but you have not sent yet. And the nice thing about that is that you can look at, whatever it's 20 messages or 50 messages or whatever, and review them, make sure that you haven't accidentally duplicated a recipient, make sure that your subject line is correct, just make sure that your recipients and your contacts are as you want them before Thunderbird finally sends them out into the world. So that's helpful. You can, if you want, have Mail Merge just generate the emails and send them automatically. I don't recommend that. I recommend giving that final look before they go out, especially if you're sending to journalists and other people who might be inclined to be critical of what you're sending out, and you really need to mind your P's and Q's and dot your I's and cross your T's before they go out, because you can't take them back. So that's Mail Merge and Send Later. And at this point, I'll just review how to actually get those. All of this is free, and it's all through the Mozilla site. So you're going to search for Mozilla Thunderbird. you're going to, and I'll just post this into the comments right now, right? So so here is the add-on for mail merge. Where's my mouse pointer? Here we go. Mail merge add-on. And then there is the link to Thunderbird. And then the link to send later. And you shouldn't have any problems installing these, whether you're on, PC or Mac or whatever, or even Linux. And so first you install Thunderbird, you download and install it, and then you download a copy of the mail merge add-on, and then you go into Thunderbird, and within the main menu screen, and there's detailed instructions on how to install this through the Gustavus University website. You're gonna, in Thunderbird, you go to Tools, then Add-ons, and then you're gonna install the add-on from a file. You navigate to where you save the file on your computer, which I recommend your desktop, your downloads folder. And then after the add-on has been installed, you quit and relaunch Thunderbird. And it's the same process for both mail merge and send later. And then start by just sending a couple test messages to either yourself if you have some different email addresses, or to a few green comrades who are willing to help you test this technology. And by testing it, you'll be in a lot better position when you're actually trying to get a press release out or an announcement out to a select group of people. And that's going to raise your email game. Now, the next tool I want to talk to you relatively briefly about is called MailChimp. And MailChimp, you're going to access through your web browser. It is a service that you sign up for, and it gives you the ability to manage large email lists up to thousands of people. For mail merge on just like your personal email and running from your personal computer, I don't recommend sending to really more than 100 people on that, and not too often. I would say, even if you're in the midst of like a really intense campaign, maybe no more than a couple times a week, maybe. And if you're running for local office, then you need to be economical about the journalists that you're sending messages to. You don't want to be sending to journalists who are not covering politics, for example. So MailChimp is for managing larger lists, and it actually includes some pretty nifty address book features that you can share with your fellow Greens. So you can do email address, first name, last name, but you can also do as many custom fields as you want. So you can include neighborhood or town, city. They have other kind of ready to go fields for address and things like that. You can put in whether this person has ever donated to your group, whether they've signed up to be a volunteer. When you're just getting started, MailChimp can be a way to manage your contact list and manage important data like that. And it can be a step up from just using a spreadsheet. Now, you will face the limitation in that since MailChimp is primarily an email blaster, an email service provider, that all of your contacts need to have an email address with them. So if you get a sign up at your table and they didn't include an email address, then you're not going to be able to include that in MailChimp. So you won't be able to put that contact into MailChimp because there's no email address to go along with that contact. So you probably are maybe going to need to use your spreadsheet or Google Sheets or Zoho Sheets, whatever you're using as your primary list building tool, but you can put a lot of that data into MailChimp so that you can then send targeted emails out to, say, just your volunteers, or just your steering committee members, or people who have expressed interest in a particular issue or particular candidate. And again, this is all free. And while MailChimp maybe is just something that you use when you're just getting started within your county, these are skills that will apply to other tools such as Nation Builder and other types of email and contact list and donor management tools. So it's good to build your skills with this. So you add emails to your database. You can import them through spreadsheets. So if you have a list of 20 people who signed up at your table, or while you were canvassing door to door, you can put those contacts in a spreadsheet and upload them to MailChimp so that they get imported all at once, and that saves time. You also would have access to a online subscription form that you could link to from your website or your Facebook page or what have you, so that people can automatically add themselves to your list, and then they'll start getting updates. And then it has some relatively user-friendly tools for composing emails and adding images to your emails and links and things like that. And it might take you a little bit of time to experiment with it, or maybe there's someone in your county group that has more experience using this kind of tool, but it is definitely worth building those muscles and building those skills, because these are going to be applicable across your entire experience as an organizer. So MailChimp, again, is free for having up to at least a couple thousand or 3,000 subscribers, which is going to be more than enough for you as you're getting started as a county group or as a local or as a club. And I highly recommend playing around with it. And you just need to give yourself time to actually schedule the composition of your emails and send yourself a test message and give yourself time to update your email list so that you are sending to everyone who has recently signed up. And that's MailChimp. So that's for sending big email blasts, right? And the other tool that we're going to talk about is called Action Network. And you can sign up for Action Network for free. The nice thing about Action Network is that it is geared specifically towards activists. And so it has tools like petitions. You can collect donations through it. You can run an events calendar through it. You can manage multiple groups in it. You can manage personal contacts in it. And you can also email those contacts through it. And so you add contacts through the website, first name, last name, email, address. You can have custom fields such as neighborhood or issues that they've had experience with, or particular types of volunteering that they'd like to engage with. You can do that with an Action Network. And the drawback to Action Network is that it will not let you import contacts in bulk. So I talked about how in MailChimp you can have a spreadsheet and upload that into MailChimp, and that can have 50 contacts or 100 contacts or whatever, and they all get uploaded at once as opposed to having to manually enter them one at a time. With Action Network, unless you apply to become a partner, which involves paying some kind of nominal fee, it is a sliding scale, but unless you apply to become a partner with them, you have to enter your email contacts one at a time. That may or may not be a deal breaker for you, depending on the rate of contacts that you are getting into your group and how much time you're willing to put into data entering them. MailChimp and Action Network, as I said, are for dealing with kind of bulk lists and for bulk lists within a group. And these are for announcement emails, right? Everything I've talked to up to this point is for announcement emails. It's your organization sending out an announcement to the world, whether it's to your constituents, your organizers, or to a group of journalists, or to a group of other people that you're sending something out to, and then you want them to reply back to you as an individual or you as your group, going to a dedicated person. Now, for discussion email lists, you need what's called a listserv, or a discussion list service. And these days, I'm recommending Google Groups for that. And the reason I'm recommending Google Groups is because Google Groups allows you to directly add someone to your discussion list without getting their permission click through Google itself. So let me rephrase that. You have someone's permission that you're going to add them to your discussion list, right? They've told you, yes, I'm willing to join your discussion list and be part of your online email discussion as part of your group. You can then directly add them through the Google Group service, right? And they'll be on your list. And if it was a mistake or whatever, then they can just unsubscribe. Whereas with other discussion lists, like for instance Yahoo groups, which Greens in New York State used for many, many years and still are using in some cases, with Yahoo, you can only send that person an invite to join the list. You cannot just directly add them, even though in the offline world you may have gotten their permission to do so. That can be a real drag if you've got a group of people that you need to add to your list. So you send them the invite, right? And maybe they don't see it. Maybe it gets caught in their spam filter. Maybe they forget to respond. Maybe they forget what this thing was about. They didn't recognize what the invite was for. And then they don't join your list because they didn't click through the invite. So then you have to call them up, or you have to email them, or you have to resend the invite, and it's a real drag. It's a real pain. Whereas with Google, and again, we're only talking about people who have consented to be on your discussion list, you can just add them. And as long as you are not spamming people, as long as you're not putting people on your list without consent, you should have no problems. Now, why do you want to have a discussion list as opposed to just everyone CCing each other all the time? Well, because CCing is inefficient. When you're composing a new message, people forget to add certain individuals. And with the group, you have one place where all of your archives are. So if a new person joins your group, you can actually point to them. You can point out the archives to them where they can maybe read up a little bit about previous decisions or what have you. Or you can just grab a conversation very quickly from your archives that are managed within the Google interface and send that to a new person. It's good to have a record of your discussions. Now, I know there are a lot of people who have concerns about Google and privacy and just Google as a multinational corporation in general. I completely empathize with those concerns, and I would say don't use any kind of email list to plan any kind of action, like for instance civil disobedience, where you are worried or overly concerned about state or police monitoring. If you're gonna ask me point blank, me personally, not speaking for Green Party of New York, but just personally speaking, I don't think that we are currently doing anything that is flagging the attention of those authorities. I'm sure they have the capability to monitor what we're doing, but they have the capability to do that just with our email, whether or not we're using Google Groups or not. I just don't think we're really on their radar at that point. Again, that's just Michael O'Neill talking. Personally, views and opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect those of the Green Party of New York State. So I think if you weigh the cost or benefit or the pros and cons of trying to effectively get your group together, then I think Google Groups is good to use. But if you want to use, what's the activist discussion list that people have used forever and ever? It's on the tip of my brain. RiseUp.net, right? RiseUp.net, I'm pretty confident is still around. That is run by activists for activists. You can use that to run your discussion list, and that should address a lot of the concerns that you have. All right, so in terms of Google Groups, you also have the ability to set tags for different kinds of discussions. If you want to kind of dig deep into the features there, it helps you categorize your email so that people can process it more effectively. If you have, I would say, more than 5 people in your group that you're working with, then it's worth it to start a discussion list. Just that you don't have to be manually adding people to new emails all the time. And as you get new people, you can just add them to the list. You don't have to email all 5 of your core group saying, hey, Jane Smith is now joining the group. Please make sure you add Jane Smith to all your emails. I guarantee you Jane Smith is going to get left off of some emails, right? So start a discussion list, whether it's with riseup.net or Google Groups or whatever, and organize your email conversations that way. All right, well, it is 4:45 on this Labor Day Sunday. Thank you very much for joining me on How Greens Get Things Done. Today we've been talking about email for activists and trying to make that as easy as possible. If you have any questions about what I've talked about, please leave them in the comments, or you can email me at michael@gpny.org. My name is Michael O'Neill. I'm the staff organizer for the Green Party of New York. This has been How Greens Get Things Done, where I share with you tips, tricks, and techniques and tools for building the Green Party and your community and this movement. And we've been talking about mail merge with Thunderbird with the additional tool of Send Later. We talked about MailChimp and Action Network for sending big bulk e-blasts. And we talked about Google Groups. And also, you can take a look at riseup.net for your discussion lists. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your Labor Day weekend. I hope you are getting involved with our healthcare campaign, fighting for universal healthcare in New York. You can find resources for that at gpny.org/healthcare. And I did a live stream last week on how to calculate what the New York Health Act would save your county or town or city in public employee healthcare costs, which is great messaging to include in your canvassing or in your local candidate campaigns. Keep an eye on September 23rd. That is a community canvassing day that the New York Health Campaign is organizing, and we want Greens to organize groups to go out on that day and hopefully go out before that day and talk to people in your community about healthcare. I hope you can use some of the email tips and techniques and tools that we just talked about in this program to help organize your community canvassing day and your Green Party activities in general. Thank you again one more time. Have a great rest of your Sunday, and I'll see you next week.